latest international companies to suspend operations in Russia to punish the country over its invasion of Ukraine. What this means from a practical standpoint is that if you have a Visa or Mastercard issued by a Russian institution and you attempt to use it outside of the country, let's say here in New York to buy a cup of coffee, that transaction will not go through. Similarly, if you have a Visa or Mastercard issued outside of Russia and you attempt to use it with a Russian vendor, that transaction will also no longer work. It will be denied. So for example, if you live in Russia and you have a bank with a foreign institution, say Chase in the US, and you have a card issued through Chase, you won't be able to make any purchases in Russia. Here's what this means for Russian citizens. If you live in Russia and you bank with a Russian bank and you attempt to use your Visa or Mastercard in the country, they will continue to work. The Russian central bank said that they can process those payments in the country. Caveat to that is that once those cards expire, they will no longer work. However, if you're a Russian citizen and you're anyplace else in the world and you pull out your Mastercard and you bank with a Russian bank, you're out of luck. Further, even if you bank with a Russian bank and you try to make a foreign purchase, something online, it also will not work. This is another attempt to financially isolate the Russian government and to put pressure on Russian President Vladimir Putin to get him to reverse course in Ukraine. Western governments have rolled out a series of sanctions, and private companies like Visa and Mastercard have undertaken their own financial punishments by pausing operations in Russia, suspending business, closing up shop. The Ukrainian president had requested that Visa and Mastercard undertake these measures in the hopes that it will pressure Russia to stop the war.
I may be close to retirement, but I'm as busy as ever. And thanks to Voya, I'm confident about my future. Voya provides guidance for the right investments. They make me feel like I've got it all under control.
Voya, be confident to and through retirement.
June. That's right, Alex. This is a significant shift from the White House, which just...
Meantime, the president is facing some growing pressure from lawmakers to block Russian oil. And NBC's Sahil Kapoor is in Washington. So, Sahil, we have the White House, which really had pushed back on this request. But what about today? Seems like a bit of a shift in tune.
That's right, Alex. This is a significant shift from the White House, which just a few days ago had knocked down the idea of banning oil imports from Russia. The fear was that it would decrease the global supply of oil and force Americans to pay higher prices at the pump. Now the United States says that calculus may be changing. Take a listen to what Secretary of State Tony Blinken said this morning on Meet the Press.
We are now in very active discussions with our European partners about banning the import of Russian oil to our countries, while, of course, at the same time maintaining a steady global supply of oil. The actions we've taken to date have already had a devastating impact on the Russian economy, but we are looking, again, as we speak, in coordination with allies and partners, at this prospect of banning oil.
Now, the backdrop here, Alex, is that President Biden is facing bipartisan pressure from Capitol Hill to ban Russian oil. In the last few days, top Democrats like Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Majority Whip Dick Durbin have jumped on board. And all of this comes as Biden is seeking to balance three different things. First, helping Ukrainians from a military, diplomatic, and humanitarian perspective. Second, protecting Americans from economic punishments directed at Putin. And third, preventing the sort of military moves, such as a no-fly zone, that could trigger a full-scale war between the U.S. and Russia. The trend we're seeing lately between the swift action and now talk of banning Russian oil imports is that the appetite for economic sanctions is growing as the mechanism to punish Putin. Alex?
Okay, Sahil Kapoor, thank you so much from Washington.
A second effort to evacuate civilians from the besieged Ukraine port city of Mariupol collapsed Sunday as Russia renewed its onslaught of shelling.
Meanwhile, a mass exodus of Ukrainians is creating what officials say is Europe's largest refugee crisis since World War II. Right now, NATO is rejecting requests from Ukraine's president to establish a no-fly zone over Ukraine. But Secretary of State Antony Blinken says the U.S. is working with Poland on the possibility of providing fighter jets to Ukraine.
Vladimir Putin continues to press this aggression. That's why I say I'm afraid this could go on for some time. But it's going to end, and it's going to end with Ukraine prevailing.
And in total, more than 1.5 million people have fled to neighboring countries since the invasion began. All right, switching gears, gas prices continue to rise here in North Carolina. So what are the chances we hit $5 or $6 per gallon?
CBS 17's Joseph Holloway is getting answers from a local economist.
We're hearing from many of you saying gas.
We're not going to put
From city to city across Ukraine, there is a mass exodus. Everyday citizens and families are trying to flee the country and escape the violence, danger, and war brought by Russian troops. Officials say more than 1.5 million Ukrainians have already left, and millions more could be on their way. The paths out of Ukraine, however, can be incredibly dangerous. Ukrainian and other world leaders have been trying to work with Russia to allow for the safe evacuation of Ukrainians trapped in cities that are being bombarded by Russian tanks, planes, and artillery. For 2 days, officials have arranged ceasefires to get citizens out, and for 2 days, those ceasefires have failed, leaving citizens stuck in harm's way. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has been calling on the United States and NATO to impose a no-fly zone over Ukraine and make the country's skies safe from Russian jets and bombers. For now, USA and NATO officials are refusing that no-fly zone request because it would mean U.S. forces would have to face Russian forces, leading to a dramatic escalation and expansion of the war.
We're not going to put the United States in direct conflict with Russia, not have American planes flying against Russian planes, or our soldiers on the ground in Ukraine, because for everything we're doing for Ukraine, the president also has a responsibility to not get us into a direct conflict, a direct war with Russia, a nuclear power, and risk a war that expands even beyond Ukraine to Europe.
Although the United States doesn't want to battle Russia directly, it is trying to give Ukraine plenty of weapons and firepower to defend itself against Russia. Sunday, over in Poland, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken was working out a deal for the Polish military to transfer dozens of its fighter jets to Ukraine in exchange for U.S. fighter jets. The Polish-owned MiG-29 fighters are older jets, but they are jets that Ukrainian pilots are familiar with, jets that can still be very dangerous to Russian troops.
Yes, we're talking very actively about this, looking at what we could do to backfill Poland if it chooses to send the MiGs and the Su planes that it has to Ukraine, how we can help by backfilling what they're giving to the Ukrainians. So that's in very active discussion as we speak.
A boss to me is someone who invests in the people that are helping them to succeed. A love for people and for purpose. That is professional.
Zelensky's forces, the kind of Russian-made fighter planes they are trained to fly, from Poland's military. And the U.S. would pledge to replace them.
We're talking very actively about this, looking at what we could do to backfill Poland if it chooses to send the MiGs and the Su planes that it has to Ukraine.
But buying replacement jets takes time, and the U.S. says Poland cannot be left vulnerable by giving up any of its defenses. Still, lawmakers say Zelensky's request for aircraft is compelling.
We don't need you to fly our planes or fly your planes into our war zone. We need the planes that we can fly ourselves.
From aiding Ukraine to cutting off Putin's oil sales. Today, the clearest sign that the U.S. position is changing.
We are now in very active discussions with our European partners about banning the import of Russian oil to our countries, while, of course, at the same time maintaining a steady global supply of oil.
The White House is wary of any step that would trigger a further spike in gas prices. But political pressure from both parties is growing.
I think there's very strong bipartisan support to cut off Russian oil and gas sales to the United States.
We should not allow Vladimir Putin to have the power at any moment to raise gas prices on Americans by cutting us off at some point now or in the future. So we should cut them off now and replace it with American oil.
And Kelly joins me now live from the White House. What do U.S. officials say about the impact of the steps they've already taken against Russia? Is it making a difference?
Well, Lester, they point out that in a matter of days, the Russian economy is headed into a deep recession. The ruble tumbled in value, and Russians are being cut off from even basic financial transactions like credit cards. But Secretary Blinken also warned that Putin is doubling down, and Americans should be prepared for this war to go on for a while. Lester?
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and